music fade out on us there real quick. Everybody, welcome to the Filmmaking Summit. It is so exciting to talk about this and to represent IndieWire here today. We're going to get into the wonderful world of pitching. Please help me in welcoming to the stage the Global Brand Partnerships Lead for Canva, Reby Silverman. And we have writer-director Jeremie Cander. Following her, we have Jonas Agan, executive producer. We also have producer Nick Moceri. And last but most certainly not least, we have Greg Barker, director. Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start off with Jeremie. Jeremie, you were selected to be part of Issa Rae's Color Creative Find Your People program. Talk to me a little bit about how pitching and how visuals in pitching have helped you emerge as a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, the program was amazing because it solely not only helped us find our people in terms of like people we can like network across with and make films in the future, but also was really heavy on like pitching. So Canva was super like instrumental in kind of like teaching us the art of pitching. But then with like the visual decks, I'm someone that mainly like sees movies and my stories in images. So with Canva, it was really just nice to be able to like put things together and like not include so many words, but really tell our story through the images. So it was amazing, to be quite honest.
Reby, explain to me sort of your relationship with Jeremie and sort of, you know, how she stood out to you as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Canva, we started partnering with the entertainment industry almost 2 years ago to empower emerging and established filmmakers and entertainment professionals to visualize their ideas and bring their next TV and film projects to life. And Canva's mission more broadly is to empower the world to design. And so when we got connected with the Color Creative team and the Find Your People program, it really felt like a match made in heaven, this shared vision and this shared work to empower the next generation of diverse and emerging talent. And just like, you know, Jeremie said, you know, Canva as a tool to help visualize those ideas and to level the playing field. You know, we know now in this day and age that standout visual communications are sort of the status quo. It's no longer just the designer's job, it's all of our jobs. And so empowering the Find Your People program filmmakers, Jeremie included, was an amazing start to kind of our foray into entertainment.
Jeremie, walk me through a little bit about creating kind of your first pitch within that program.
Oh, wow. So basically when we came up with the story, it was kind of like, okay, so the story is called Grief Retreat. It's about a terminally ill mother who gets tricked into going into a grief retreat and she thinks she's going to a spa. Really funny. It'll be out maybe a year from now after we go through the festivals. But mainly we just wanted to kind of like hit on grief and kind of like an absurd kind of detail that we were trying to like throw into the story. So it's kind of like, you know, throwing in like a swan, but like maybe putting like the mother's head on it just to kind of like show kind of the feeling that we want you to have when you are viewing this film. And I think we did pretty good. I mean, people loved it at the screening, but it was like a lot of visual research. My producer was amazing. He's actually here in the crowd, Chitty. He was really instrumental in kind of like helping us find those images and really kind of like helping us guide to make sure that we're staying on track with our story. So it was amazing.
Obviously, you know, standing out with one story is one thing in Hollywood, but there's also the underlying reality of making it practical. Let's talk a little bit about how visuals are contributing to representing budget in a room. Nick, as a producer, can you talk to me about your experience visually representing financials and what that looks like when you're making a pitch?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't fill your pitches with a whole bunch of like spreadsheets and financial data. I mean, no one wants to read, and really no one wants to read numbers. But I think the deck and the pitch is an opportunity to show scope and scale and ambition, right? So I think you want it to show that you're ambitious, but if you're trying to make a $1 million indie film and you've got this entire world building deck with robots and CG, you know, you start to create some cognitive dissonance. So I think it's using the visual tools to communicate the scope, scale, tone of the piece so that when you say the budget is X, the math all adds up.
Nick, talk to me a little bit about your relationship with Greg and sort of what you guys have been doing in terms of pitching together.
Yeah, so Greg and I are pitching and developing a new feature film that Greg wrote and will direct. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really taking his amazing script. How do we communicate it in a visual medium that clearly communicates it? Because that's probably the first thing that they're going to read. And then it's just about packaging. So right now we're going out to actors because that's what we need to unlock the budget. And so how do we create something that an actor is going to respond to, knowing that it's probably the first thing they'll see?
Greg, tell me a little bit about your experience in terms of pitching to different types of rooms, right? You can pitch to actors versus pitching to a financer. What does that look like for you?
Well, I think when pitch decks started becoming in vogue maybe 10, 15 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, why do we have to do this? But actually, it's like such a pain. But actually now I feel like it is the first step in the creative process beyond the script, but like the first step in conveying a visual vision, a tone, a feel of the project for whether it's a financier, an actor. And I find now that although the technology makes it now so easy, the rigor that you put into it, finding the images that really capture what you want to say. So somebody goes through your deck and sees, and they go through the kind of emotional journey that they will have experienced when they see your series or your film. That all should be in the deck. And so then it's kind of the same whether you're pitching to actors or to financiers or showing the deck to a DP or a production designer when it comes on board. So now it's a lot of work, but I actually really embrace it with excitement as the first chance I get privately with my producer to sort of play with ideas and to see what really works.
I'm seeing a lot of fervent nodding from Jeremie. So can you tell me, do you feel like that process helps you capture your own story even personally? I mean, it helps you pitch someone else, but does it help you pitch yourself?
Yeah, because I mean, my favorite part is kind of like finding the images. I feel like sometimes I spend too much time on it, but you can really just like go down a rabbit hole of just like all these amazing images out there. But yeah, I think like when you find the ones that truly speak to your story, and even if you don't find it specifically, you can kind of still use it as a talking point of like, it's going to look like this, but then we'll do it this way. And even like with Canva, it's been super cool because I've been able to use the whiteboard feature because I'm like very like scattered brain. So I just like post the image there. I put a little word or a little description and I come back to it. But just being able to see everything laid out, it really does kind of like help with the emotional journey that you're trying to tell with your story, but then also just like who you are and your voice as like a filmmaker. So it's cool.
Jonas, explain to me as an executive producer how those visuals impact you and sort of how you end up realizing what's going to move something forward with the studio. How can you tell what looks authentic and what looks like it's really going to break through?
I should also mention I was a studio exec for 13 years, and I was a writer, so I've been on all sides of the fence. I think what everybody's talking about first in terms of fundamentals is tone and voice, because there could be sort of a coldness to a lot of pitches, which is great imagery that sort of tells a story, but if it doesn't tell a story with a real feeling and personality, it doesn't matter. Another thing that's really worked for me and when taking pitches is to make sure that the first few minutes you are telling some key scene of that story. It could be your cold opener prologue, and I work in television. It could be some critical scene later, and you say, let me tell you how we got there. But what you want to do is make sure that the audience, the person you're pitching to, is leaning in, that they have a visceral feeling of what is this show, who are these main characters, what's at conflict, and why am I engaging in it? And I think that speaks to also making sure that there's something thematic in the show. What is the show? What is the person, the creator, trying to tell? What story? It could be in terms of ideologies, it could be in terms of allegories, or it could be something personal. And the more I've seen people actually take images of themselves as kids, or their families, or anything from their childhood, and sort of express this is how they got there, or I was this kid, I wished I was that kid, or my family didn't look like this, so I wanted to tell a story that was about this, really evokes something because you participate on an emotional level. So that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say to that, for our pitch in particular for Grief Retreat, we started off with a meditation, which can be seen later in the film. And then also like a personal thing that we did is added pictures of our mothers and us when we were children. So just kind of like to add that emotional connection since it was about mothers and just the sacrifices they made for us to like be in this industry. So it was cool.
It's so funny you guys mentioned that, and I think about the scene with Jennifer Garner in 13 Going on 30, where she's got the big mood board and she's talking about how like the authenticness has been lost at this magazine that she works at. Reby, can you explain to me how over at Canva that's become, something that you're seeing more of in terms of the way that people use Canva?
So just to kind of context setting as well, that's what's gotten us to this point, and at events like these is we started out, just about 2 years ago, working with the entertainment industry, and we heard a lot of the same pain points when we had conversations with people, emerging filmmakers and people who had been in the industry for decades of, having to pay a designer to bring a one-off pitch to life, which can be time-consuming and expensive, turnaround times going from 3 weeks to 2 weeks to 2 days, the challenges we face in a post-COVID remote world and collaborating with teammates in different places. And we set out to address some of those challenges. So, with Canva, you're coming, and not starting from a blank page, which was another challenge. We heard from folks a lot of like, what do I put in the pitch deck? Where do I start? Especially for the non-designer. And so we started with our product and we built a suite of entertainment-specific templates on Canva. So your film pitch deck, your TV series Bible, your call sheet, your film poster, so that you're not starting from a blank page. Collaborating with your teammates wherever they are in the world, whatever device they're using, saves you time, streamlines your creative processes. Our content library and our AI Magic Studio tools make visualizing your world and bringing that vision to life, especially for the non-designer, accessible. And one of the announcements we're especially excited about, which will be accessible to all users in, I think, 2 weeks, is a recent integration with ShotDeck. So I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the audience, lots of claps. So now ShotDeck will be available inside the Canva tool, so you'll no longer have to download your image from ShotDeck and drag it into Canva to build your pitch deck or your world. You can access that all in the product, and all of those things, all of those pieces, in addition to our partnerships with amazing organizations like Color Creative and Find Your People, help make Canva, we hope, to be sort of that no-brainer tool to help bring your ideas to life. Again, to level the playing field so you're not starting from that blank page and you can, bring your next TV or film project to life with Canva.
Canva has been so accessible for so long, and it's been something that I've seen film students use. I've used it as an industry journalist. I've used it. I'd love to hear a little bit from you, Nick and Greg, about sort of the collaborative process in terms of building a pitch and sort of what that looks like more in 2024. We're not always in the same room, but when you're trying to create the same vision, that can create a divide. How do you bridge that, and how do you end up really bringing your minds together through a pitch deck?
I think it's just, we're all so used to working remotely now, except when we're on set. I think it's kind of a no-brainer to do that. I think it's just, but it's phenomenal that you're integrating ShotDeck, because that's
amazing.
So great. Because a lot of it's just like, here's this Dropbox, and look at these images from ShotDeck, and now to be able to see that integrated it's great. But it's really it's just spending the time to make mistakes. This is what I love about this process early on, because there's no studio looking over your head saying not this, or no DP, or no, you just kind of in the privacy with you and the images that you're researching, and a producer that you trust as a creative partner, trying things out and okay, this works, this is the tone we want, no, this isn't quite right, and it's just that kind of freedom to experiment that later on set, you can do it, but there's a much more consequences. Figuring out, and what's so satisfying is when you see the final product, the film, and then you look back at the pitch deck and there's a connection between the two. You feel like, okay, I got it right from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think the deck is such an important tool to make sure that everyone's making the same movie. Making movies and TV series are so hard, and if you're not all rowing in the same direction, you're just going to tire yourselves out. And so for Greg and I, it's an opportunity for us to go are these the types of actors or the archetypes or the, just the feel, the vibe of the movie, so that when we bring on more collaborators, because this is a collaborative medium, so that everyone's making the same thing at the same time.
Jonas, you'd mentioned that you've been in the industry from a lot of different directions and for a lot of years. Talk to me about your experience of how you've seen the art of pitching evolve. What was it a decade ago compared to what it is now? And do you like the changes you've seen?
Well, it used to always be in person, that somebody would come in and they would tell you a story, and very rarely did they have something visual. And if they did, it was usually a poster board with some images that they would kind of talk through, and it was very secondary. Sometimes people would come up with key art that generally didn't look good, and you would be like, that should definitely not be the poster, or what you're pitching me looks nothing like what you're showing me. Pitch decks for me really grew as part of Zoom. That when we were sort of during COVID and we were getting pitches nonstop, that the person who was pitching was able to sort of share on their screen, let me walk you through this. That's when it became a giant percentage of pitches had that. And I think now, because we're accustomed to that, there's still a lot of non-in-person pitches, and it is Zoom pitches, and it allows people to show the elements that they want to bring, obviously, to the piece of material. Sometimes when people are talking through what their vision is, they'll sort of make the mistake of, they'll be like, so there's a really strong father figure, and they'll show a picture of The Rock. And you're like, is The Rock part of this project? It's like, no, but they're like The Rock. and immediately it becomes, you sort of understand it, but it removes you from what this project really is. So it's more about grabbing, again, images that seem truly reflective. I would say people that aren't actors that you know, and even in sizzle reels, like trying to draw from stuff that isn't universal or ubiquitous is probably better, because if I see something from Hunger Games, I'm thinking about Hunger Games. And also, you're definitely not making Hunger Games. So try to find stuff that feels fresh and new, that you're making your own, and combining those elements really bring it to life.
Yeah, and I would just jump on that. I think the specificity that you guys have both been talking about is so important. Like right now, we are finally celebrating stories that are from diverse experiences and backgrounds and all those things. And so the more specific you can make your story, the more personal, the more universal that it becomes. Like a show like Reservation Dogs is such a good show. I have no experience or background with the Native culture, and yet the more they dive deeper into that, the more that I find things to grab onto that get really exciting. And so then with your pitches, you don't have to be designers. It's great that we have Canva and tools that help us communicate. You just have to communicate, communicate that specificity. It might be one image. Your slide deck might be one single image that communicates your whole story. So trying to overdo it, or to what Jonas's point, like having a bunch of references that are everyone else's stories and not your own, like make it your own. Like that's what's going to sell the thing.
I love that idea about not overdoing it, because sometimes people will cycle through images literally talking about, like, well, then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And you want to have a moment to catch up and hear it and feel it instead of just see it. So I do think it's being very judicious and strategic with when you present visuals in terms of how they align with the story you're telling.
Absolutely. One of the things we've learned, and working in the industry for the past couple years, is, or one of the biggest questions we hear is, what should go in the pitch deck? Like, what's the format? What are the slides? What comes first? What comes second? And through our partnerships and through the experts we work with, it's like there's no one way. It can be one image. We've heard from industry execs. Who was it? Todd Cherenowski, production designer on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Lilo and Stitch. When he pitched Obi, it was one picture. That was his pitch deck. But he's had 50 slide pitch decks for films where it makes sense. So it really varies based on the project. And I think being grounded in what is that story, what is that vision you're trying to tell, they shouldn't all look the same.
And also, who's the audience for that pitch deck? So like right now, I've got another project that's it's an idea, and we're trying to get people to fund the script. So just to get people to take the meeting, we have a longer pitch deck that we show in the meetings, but then I had to create like a one-pager, which is really like 4 or 5 pages. But it doesn't give too much away, but it gets people to want to hear the pitch. And then in the actual, so with our project, we had something, it's like 18 pages, I guess, and it was designed to get people to read the script, but not give them so much that they're like, oh, I know what this is, and yes or no. But they want just entice them. And then, like, for the full in-person meeting, it might be longer. It might be 25, 30 pages, or less, depending on what the actual. It's a performance, and what feels right for that particular performance to that audience.
Can I jump in on that? Which is, what's tricky is every company that you're pitching to wants to hear something different, right? So if you're taking something to Warner Brothers versus Apple versus Disney, they have needs, and you might have to adjust your pitch to the needs. The real tricky thing is the executive you're pitching to also has wants. And if you can figure out who to talk to know, like, don't talk for more than 10 minutes because they will clock out. And there are those people. There's other people who are fully engaged. There's other people that you know are always like doing this with their shoe and looking at their phone. And to have some preparation about who that face is that you're pitching will make you feel more confident and comfortable and let you sort of know how you're going to present this in a way that you feel you've done the best presentation.
How do you get that information? What do you do to do that?
Give us the insight.
I mean, that's why you just have to know a lot of people.
Yeah. So you tailor everything to the exact person that you're going to.
I happen to have the benefit of having worked at Disney for a long time and seeing a lot of people cycle through. And this was just me thinking on the executive, the studio side when I was pitched to would be much different than when one of my colleagues was pitched to, and some people knew that, and it's trying to speak the language. For sure, you should speak the language of the company, right? Disney is a very sort of family-friendly company. Apple might be very sort of heady. And so you want to present it on those terms that, I don't want to say are rudimentary, but sort of get to the root of the value system of the company. And then whoever you can ask about, do you know so-and-so? Do you know Jonas Agan? Like, is he cool? Does he like to laugh? Does he suck? And I'm cool, and I like to laugh,
Jonas is cool.
Sometimes I suck. Ask my kids. My wife, who's here, will sometimes say that too. But anyway, all of the information that you could gather is helpful.
Okay, so we want to be specific, we want to be authentic, we want to get insider tips if we can. And Greg, you said something that really stood out to me about it being a performance, which is still true. And we have all seen, I've got my phone up here, we have all seen somebody holding shaky cards trying to get through a speech at a wedding. We've all been there. Talk to me a little bit about the experience. How do you rein in your relationship with your pitch deck? How do you make sure that you don't get swallowed, even if it's just one image? How do you not get swallowed in the visuals that you've brought along? And that question's for anybody on the panel.
I just imagine I'm walking onto set.
Okay.
Whether it's in my office in the back of my garden and walking to a pitch, like, okay, I'm walking onto set, there's 400 people, and this is what I'm doing. And it's everything's an audition, everything's a performance, And when you're actually talking about a professional, you're asking people to take a leap of faith in your idea, which could be great, could not be great. It's all in the execution, right? But you're asking people to believe in you and believe in this idea, and to give them the confidence that, okay, we can go on this journey together.
Yeah, and I think you have to have the confidence and the just comfortability with the material to basically be off book. Like, you don't want to feel over rehearsed and so like, okay, and on this thing we're doing this. Like, you want it to feel conversational, and that's a thing that gets said a lot that people don't really know what it means. But it's just like, imagine, Jonas and I are having a cup of coffee. How would I talk to him about this thing? How do I just make this as confident and comfortable as possible? And then the presentation materials are just, just bonus.
Yeah, I would say shout out to my friends and family back at home, because I've gone through my pitch deck with them so many times. They're like, okay, we get it, we know the story, but it really is helpful because it allows me to get comfortable with the material and be able to walk into any room and confidently tell them about my story and pitch it to them. So friends and family are super helpful too with practicing.
I'd be curious, it's difficult to make financials a casual part of conversation. So how do you do that, Nick?
Casually. No, I mean, look, I think that people should be able to sense from the story in the deck, about how expensive does this feel. And that's excluding costs of actors and things like that. So I'm primarily in the independent film space. And so it's, usually I'm just telling it from the beginning. It's like, all right, I think this is going to be $4 million. I think this is going to be $3 million. And then just, do you have the material that backs it up so that they can see that? I mean, I think that budgets are such a range, and so you just want to make sure that your materials, what you're talking about, fit that range. And that's where Jonas's point about knowing your buyer, like, you need to know what the appetite of the financiers you're talking to. You need to know roughly what, you know, the actors' rates are and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about the material. And so the script's got to be the best thing that in your package, and then the rest is just gravy.
We would get pitches on the Disney Plus side where people would take like a fantasy pitch and then they would have this insane world that they created, like it's beyond Star Wars. And we're like, this is not going to be a $100 million movie, right? And so to that point, you have to kind of understand where you're level setting. And you said scope and scale before. I think that's a really important piece of presenting the pitch and knowing what your material, what is that ceiling that you're trying to achieve.
So you want people to see, because the one we're pitching together is a higher budget, and we reflected that kind of gloss and gravitas in the pitch deck. You want people to look at it and think, okay, this movie should cost X, you know. So it should be organic to the material, to the script, and then to the way it's being presented.
Reby, what visual trends are you seeing in terms of the way that people are standing out, specifically with Canva? I mean, are we seeing, you know, are people embedding videos? Is this the kind of thing where, you know, obviously you're talking about different aspects of what Canva can do now. What's really sticking out to you as sort of cutting through and helping make visions clear, both in terms of budget and creativity?
Great question. I mean, we know now that visuals can often be the make or break of getting that project greenlit. And so at a baseline, Canva makes that really easy, but we've seen people come to the table and just go above and beyond. So, you know, adding music to your pitch deck, which invites intrigue, sets the tone, draws people in, and you can do that really easily with the tool, literally copy and pasting a song from Spotify. Videos, so, you know, our content library has those. ShotDeck will now be a part of that, which makes, again, visualizing that idea really, really easy. And we have our Magic Studio tools, which we were talking backstage before. That's Canva's suite of AI tools. And about a year ago when we launched them, it was like, you know, maybe we won't talk about them so much, especially, you know, within the industry, but that's changed. We've actually seen the industry come forward and say, train me. I want to know how to use these tools so that I can bring my ideas to life. And I think there's sort of, that's almost another panel, another conversation to be had. But we have tools like Magic Media, where let's say you're not finding that exact image you want to create the world that you're building, that you can, you know, use a tool like Magic Media to build that, whether it's an image or a video. And these, again, help level the playing field, first of all, and really bring your vision and world to life in a way that wasn't necessarily possible even a few years ago. So we're seeing that usage across the board in the entertainment industry specifically, but across others too.
Jeremie, can you speak at all to the use of different types of media in a pitch deck? I saw some nodding.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, for the Grief Retreat pitch deck that we did with Canva and Color Creative, we started with the sound bath meditation scene, which is in the film. So we started off and we actually had like a sound bath in it, and it was so cool because I don't think people were expecting that. Like walking in, they're like, yeah, we're just gonna start talking. And we're like, no, we're gonna do a sound bath meditation. Please close your eyes. It was just something really different and kind of like hooked them from the beginning. But being able to use images and video and song has like completely transformed how I pitch my projects, which is nice.
I love that you did that.
Yeah.
That is such a unique
Yeah.
approach towards
It was cool.
getting people engaged.
Well, yeah, it's don't be boring.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that's everything. Like, literally.
Think outside the box.
That is the biggest sin in this whole thing, business. Like, don't be boring. And so whatever it is that's going to drive that interest or surprise or delight, like, that's the good stuff.
And, you know, I think that's a pretty strong note to end on. Thank you guys so much. We could talk about this all day. Thank you so much.